Summoners, welcome to episode number 10 of the Casual Tryhard Legends of Runeterra podcast. I'm your boy, Anthony Rico Plays 1723. It is Christos next to me. How's it going, Christos?
Yo, we're doing great. How's it going, buddy?
Good. Back at it again. I know we missed out last week's episode. Unfortunately, work and life got into the way of things, but luckily we were able to find a good time for the both of us, and now we are back at it again. Because we missed a week's episode, there's a lot that we want to kind of try to jam pack into this episode. But first, I think the spot that we want to first start out with is going to be talking about the meta. Would you agree, Christos?
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about some more wide topics that kind of can cover multiple metas, but are specific to this one.
Perfecto. We basically looked at the meta as of April 12th. Once again, this is going to be a big thanks to Cosmic Plays. Mentioned him last episode. I'm going to mention him again. If you don't know him, he's the guy who kind of compiles all the information and makes it into a nice, neat infographic. And then from there, it's a nice visual way to look at the meta. So that's going to be kind of one of the tools that we're going to go use about how we see the meta shaping in Runeterra. So if you want to go ahead and start, Christos, go for it.
Yeah, so we have a surprising one here in our first place kind of position with this biggest share in the meta. A deck that I'm sure many people have played against on ladder if you're out there, and that is Spider Aggro. This deck is a surprising one to kind of pop up after the last big event. And it has been about, I would say, 2 weeks now.
Yes.
It's been starting to come up. But it's just your standard. This is your mono red of Legends of Runeterra. I think is a good representation.
Yes.
It's your low to the ground kind of get you dead deck. That deck is great for ladder.
Yes.
In almost every game, the small ball hit you and keep hitting you type deck is almost always going to be well represented on ladder. Everyone should expect it. Nothing crazy coming out of the card selections here, so it's just a good ladder deck.
So I've had the pleasure of playing Spider Aggro, and I really do enjoy it. I would say that it also has a little bit more play to it, just because there's your aggro, I'm gonna burn your face part of that deck. And then there's also the really cool, what I like to call the mini combo killer with your spiders. So there are games where you go turn one, you hit them with your 1 mana 2/1 fearsome spider. Then on 2, you hit them with Spiderling, which makes your 2 spiders 1 to 2/2, 1's a 1/1. And then I like it because let's say your opponent has the attack token on 3 mana. You then drop in your Elise, and then once the attack token comes on you, Elise levels up because she sees that you have 3+ spider allies, and then she turns all of your spider allies. She basically gives them all fearsome, and she gives them all challenger. And then there's some decks where they just can't beat that. They just can't get hit for for all of that. And then on top of that, when you get the attack token, if you had Frenzied Skitter, the 3 mana, give your spatter allies +1/+0, and give your opponent's creatures -1/0. It's incredible because then it makes all of your opponent's creatures under that 3 threshold for fearsome, so then they're getting smacked in the face for basically a 1-turn kill.
Yeah,
so
it's really obnoxious. That and Arachnid Sentry are really good together.
Yes, absolutely, 1010%. I like it. As I said, it has the whole I'm gonna burn your face, but then it also has that little combo kill in it, and it's been fun to play. I can't tell you how many times where I've just Like I will just win out of nowhere just because I get all the spider combos and I just smack them in the
Yeah,
face.
sometimes they just die.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're just dead. Like the opponent can't do anything.
yeah,
They either can't deal with the fact that you go too wide, or they can't deal with the fact that your creatures are all fearsome. So it's a fun, really fun deck to play. I've had a
I
really
agree.
good win percentage with it.
I have a fantastic win percentage with it.
Nice.
I do think it's a good telling point when an aggro deck is actually pretty fun to play like
Yes.
this. Because some aggro decks, for me at least, have like boring, repetitive play lines, and this one doesn't. So
Yeah, I agree
I
with you there.
yeah, like mono white in Magic is really boring for me,
Yeah.
and this is just like it's got so much stuff. It's great.
Yes.
Um, but anyways, we'll move on. This deck, by the way, has a 54% play win rate in Platinum to Challenger. So to give you an idea, it is right below that threshold of needing some attention from
Correct.
Riot.
That's 55% for you ladies and gentlemen out there.
Yes, so that's really good. I think this is a fine deck. I don't think it needs to be touched. If anything did need to be touched, I would say it's House Spider because it has the same problem as Doomkeeper in making an extra body.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's either going to be like making House Spider a 1/1 or making it cost 3.
I mean,
One of those
as
two
I
things.
said before, House Spider helps out a lot with doing that
Mhm.
Elise level up. So I'm with you there.
Yep. Yep. But anyways, the next deck I want to talk about is actually Shen Jarvan combo. So we talked about Jarvan being kind of like a boring, not really fancy unit. Just kind of gets stuff done. Sometimes it doesn't. Not very exciting. But when you combo it with Shen, it starts to get a lot better. And this has kind of replaced the Protect the Queen that we saw for so long in LOR.
With Fiora and Shen, right.
Yes. And Jarvan is just kind of like a big, beefy Fiora in a sense. So when you can stall for a little bit later and play this big, beefy boy, and then protect him instead, everything kind of gets better. It's slower, but it can deal more reliable damage. And right now, that's what we want to be doing when we see meta games with like Lissandra Talia and stuff like that, or Lissandra Trundle and the control decks and all these decks with removal. We want to see more resilient creatures, and that's what Jarvan is.
So, Chris, those two questions just because I have not played that deck. First questions first. Is it basically almost identical, like the same package as the Fiora Shen package?
It is very similar, yeah.
Okay.
There's like counting Jarvan, there's like 10 cards different.
Okay. And
So it's
then would you say like people aren't popping off about this deck because Jarvan comes in later, and that's fine. That's more
I think
that at
so.
least that gives you more interaction.
It's not even the more interaction thing. It's more time to develop your board state against theirs.
Okay,
So
perfect.
you know how Fiora would come in on like turn
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 three.
3 4, you start having problems. That time would be with the Jarvan Shen package. You can like start doing stuff, and you have like an extra 2 turns to build up.
Gotcha.
So it's just like a couple turns that makes people feel like they have more say in the game.
That was just a question that I had is in terms of like what seems to be okay and what seems to be not okay.
It's like people I think really want like 4 to 5 turns, and when you start doing stuff on like turns 3 and 4, it feels bad
Sure.
because like you're either ignoring the other team or the other opponent rather, and then you have the 2 ships passing in the night
Right.
type game, and it don't feel super great. But when you have like turn 4, 4, 5, and 6, and you can actually interact and fight back, that's when you have that really compelling gameplay, and that's more what Jarvan Shen does.
Gotcha. Yes, sir.
Yep. And so for folks at home, this deck has a 53% win rate. Um, it is really
That's pretty
good
high,
against.
man. That's pretty
It
high.
is pretty high. So it's really good against other mid-range decks. This is like the bigger mid-range, and a philosophy for Magic that we bring over to LOR is you want to be playing the bigger mid-range deck, and you don't want to be outsized so easily in these matchups. And Jarvan Shen usually outsizes most other creatures in the
Yeah.
meta. So it sits at that top and really only loses to aggro strategies like the Spiderlings deck or the Ezreal Draven strat of like really getting in there, getting in fast and hard. So
getting under them before they can start doing their Jarvan
exactly.
stuff. Gotcha.
But this deck also suffers from the problem of mid range loses to control. So the Lissandra Trundle matchup is really hard because you
Sure.
don't have a ton of stuff early game, and that gives them time to have their counter spells, their board wipes, their removal ready.
Right.
And matchup tends to be rough, not unwinnable, but tough.
And talking about control, it seems like that's number 3 on the list.
Yeah, so control is control.
Yeah, sure, fair.
Yeah, not it's not everyone's cup of tea. We know that, and it's not a particularly fantastic ladder deck because on ladder you can run into everything. Like 40% of the metagame is other. That
Right.
is not something you want to see as a control player. That is scary.
Right.
But when you do have your stuff and your answers ready, it's good. And so the control deck right now is in a place where we deal with 1/1s really, really well.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
we deal with things where they don't kill us in 3 turns. We can probably deal with it. And so control's in a pretty good spot. A
Would
lot
you
of people.
say, Christos? I know that I've played. I don't like control because, once again, folks, this is just my personal preference. I'd rather be proactive, and like I feel like in the amount of time it takes for me, I'm not a great control player to play one control match and get that win. I could have won like 3 or 4 times with Spider Aggro. So in your eyes, since you've played this deck, are you more of the do you like the more standard variant of control, or or would you rather play the like get the Watcher out as quickly as possible variant with the Spectral Matron?
So I don't really like the Turbo Watcher strategy.
Okay.
It's just not my type of gameplay. I've never liked the cheat out the big creature strat.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not for me. I, depending on my mood, really like to sit down and play a control game, especially like the mirror
Oh
is
my
really
god,
fun.
it's brutal.
Yeah, it's a long grindy game, but it's really fun.
I will
Uh,
say I love watching it. Like
mhm.
even back in like Magic the Gathering days, I think one of my favorite matches to ever watch, which I'm sure you've seen, is the Ben Stark versus Shenhar.
The
The
quadruple lightning bolt game.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
Like
sir.
I love watching it, but golly, I can't play it for the life of me. It's too much. Um,
It's it's a lot. I this is kind of a side tangent, but Logan and I sat down and played control mirrors for like 10 hours one day to prep
no,
for a PPTQ.
no, sir.
Hmm. And
I
so I went to this PPTQ, and the control mirror was the only game I won that day. Yeah, so test against the field, not just one matchup.
Oh, that is so funny.
That advice is free of charge for our audience here.
Free of charge, folks. Don't say we don't give you nothing. And then now
Control
the
is really good overall, I think.
yes,
It's in a good spot, except against the recursion deck, which is like one of my personal favorites here, the dredge deck of LOR, the depths.
oh man,
Yes, sir.
deep.
I love this deck. It's so cool, and it smashes control, which is neat
Yes, it
because
does.
recursive threats are kind of busted. And so I'm gonna skip around a little bit. The next one I want to talk about is deep, with our big boys Maokai and Nautilus. This deck has been around since I think LOR came out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it
Uh,
was. It
and
was there since the beginning.
yeah, and it's never been like prevalent like A tier, but I'm glad it's starting to pop up a little bit more, and it makes sense. That
So, would
it's
you say that our calls on the patch episode when we said that these buffs is going to help deep? Would you say that we were correct?
yeah, just a little bit. I think the buffs mostly like they weren't super good, but they got people interested in the deck again, and that's the key to get like meta churn going is people testing and seeing if things are actually good or if they're just good on paper.
Right.
But deep actually has like decent legs. It's not great into an aggro meta. Like it's not. You're gonna lose to spiderlings like 100% of the time. It's such an unwinnable matchup.
What's your, just out of curiosity, because I've seen different deep lists, what's your ratio between Weathering Whale, Vengeance, and there's like another kill spell? Like, what's on your build? Like, what's your percentages?
Weathering Whale and Vengeance, I want to say a 2-2.
2-2, okay.
I think it's, I tried 3-1 for a little bit, and I think 2-2 is just a little like better, more consistent. That's just me. People can do all sorts of stuff, but I like to have, like, even in other decks, I try to even out my kill spells.
Gotcha.
I just have different hits, unless it's like one of for like a specific thing, then I'll have like one of it.
Gotcha.
But yeah, in general, I like to do like 2-2s instead of 3-1s.
Yeah, I mean, it's a safer option.
I love the play pattern of it, personally. Like, just mill, go deep, and then wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. We can go next.
What was like the fastest you've ever gone deep?
Turn 6.
Epale. Man, yeah, that was really? Like turn 6?
No interaction from my opponent. They're just playing the creatures. I'm doing my thing. And then I won that game very easily.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, I've played against Deep. So in my time playing against Deep, it always comes down to like whether I have the Battle Fury to win the game. Because it's gotten stronger. Like the buffs that it got for the early game, I think really put it into a position where people can actually consider it as a decent deck for laddering. And then, as you said, because it basically eats up control, it finds itself in a better spot than usual, I would say.
So Deep is in like a pretty good spot, I think. It's not like an insane deck. It's not, I wouldn't even say like tier 1. It's probably like a solid tier 2. But it's sitting at a 51% win rate. Not bad by any means. Like you can still get your wins, you can climb, but you will suffer some matchups to the aggro decks, and even like some of the faster mid-range decks are not great.
Right.
Like Enfield Draven is pretty rough. That's like a really, like, it says 55% on this infographic, but from my experience, it's been hard. And even decks like Zoe Lee Sin, like Zoe is obnoxious for you. So I would try to avoid that one at all costs, and play your heart out when you're playing this, because it's really fun. And I think a lot of people will like the play pattern. People like doing these kind of oddball-y things, so I'd give this deck a shot, or watch some content if you can of this and see if you like it. Because I would recommend it. It's pretty fun.
I think I mentioned this before on the show. I think this is the deck that me and Brofer are gonna pilot when it's time to do that crossover episode.
Now is probably like a great time to do that too.
Yeah. Because it's one of those where it's a dredge deck. He loves that type of thing. But now, kind of switching turns to, we're going from Deep, which is the control killer. Now we're going to talk about aggro here. And I'm kind of glad that it has such a high win rate. So hopefully Riot can look at it. But the next deck is Discard Aggro. And it has a 55... It has a 55% win rate.
This deck, I hate it. I don't even want to talk about it. I hate it so much.
I would say, like, I've dabbled in discard aggro.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like maybe I just don't know how to play it right. But it's definitely one of those decks where, like, sometimes you high roll so well, it's like ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have the start that you need, like, I don't know if it has enough like footing to be like a deck that I would like to play. I feel like you have to mulligan for what you need in the very beginning, and because a lot of the cards are kind of repetitive, you can get there. But I agree that there are moments when I'm playing against this deck and I'm just like, how in the world was my opponent able to draw so freaking well?
Every time.
Every
time. I am a player who likes to like accrue my resources, play to the battlefield, do my stuff, and have my game plan. And then la-di-da, this deck comes around, it's like, I'm gonna play my creatures, I'm gonna make the I hate it. It's so stupid. I hate discard decks. I hate it. That's all I have to say about it.
Okay. All right. Let's move. Let's move on quickly. We'll just say that now, according to Riot, it's in their watch list. So
yeah, I do like that it gets absolutely thrashed by Lysandre Trundle.
It does.
That makes my day. I bet that matchup is actually like an 80%er. Like you just can't win. It's so bad.
I think. Doesn't this tell us?
Yeah, it's a 26% matchup against Lysandre Trundle at least.
Wow.
Yeah, really, really bad.
26%. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that when you see percentages like that, you're like, oh, yikes. Again, we don't know the sample size of these percentages, so keep that in mind. But 26% is a pretty low number.
Yes.
Yeah. The concerning thing for me is the abundance of very high numbers in the other matchups, leading us like that 26% is weighing this down so heavily that if you don't count that, its win percent is like closer to 60.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Mm-hmm. So be careful. I wouldn't be surprised to see this deck climb in the next coming weeks.
Wow.
And I hate that.
So we'll see what Riot decides to do, because that win rate is crazy.
Yeah, that's going to be my shot called for the next couple weeks. Is we'll see this deck at like 10 to 12% play rate from 6.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. He's saying discard aggro is going to go up in play rate. But talking about shots called, even though the percentages don't say I'm right, I am telling you, folks, that I am going to be right. But on 6% play rate is Lee Sin and Zoe, and it right now has a 49% win rate. So I only think it is like that because everyone got sick of Targon for a little bit and they wanted to stay away from it. But I think that once like the bigger tournaments start coming around, I think Lee Sin and Zoe is going to start their percentages of play, and their win rate is going to start going up again. Go for it.
I have a question for you, since this is kind of a deck that you know a good amount about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this deck suffers from the smaller mid-range fallacy that we were talking about earlier?
What was that fallacy again, Christos?
Where you don't want to be playing the smaller mid-range deck in like the mid-range matchup. So think like this deck versus Fiora, or not Fiora, Shen Jarvan, for example, has a really bad win rate. Do you think overall this deck is just a smaller mid-range and will lose popularity based on that?
So I think right now the biggest issue is that if you look at its win rate and look at the decks that it's doing poorly in, it's because this type of deck, you're pulling all your resources onto like, I want to say like 3 or 4 creatures, and when you're playing against a meta that has so many go wide strategies, if your opponent just gets under you and goes wide quickly, you just can't keep up with it. So that's why I like to play like Spider aggro, and when I see the Lee Sin Zoe, I'm like, I already know what to mulligan for, and that's just go wide as quickly as you possibly can, because that they have a really tough time controlling the board until they draw their Lee Sin. And then by then, let's say they have a tough time drawing the Lee Sin and they want to pull all their resources on either the Goat or the Zoe, depending on the build. By then, you've already swung so much and you're going so wide that they just can't. By the time they stabilize the board, it's already too late.
I can see that.
I think this deck does better against the decks that I play, which are like the Freeyard Overwhelm decks, where it's like I don't play out wide as quickly as all the other decks, and I'm playing basically 2 or 3 big bodied creatures, and by the time I get set up, they draw their Lee Sin and they start challenging, and they have the barrier, and then I can't do anything by then. So it's probably a situation where I don't like it because it perfectly counters the way that I like to play. But we'll see as the weeks go by on whether it starts gaining popularity.
Okay, I can see that. That all fits the bill. I do think that this deck is kind of it's in like a weird spot where it loses to a bunch of stuff, but it has like a couple really good matchups.
Yeah.
And if those really good matchups become more prominent, obviously this deck will also become more prominent. So we'll have to wait and see. You could very well end up being right if the deep ends up being like a real big deck. Then this deck
Right.
will also rise and match it. So we'll see.
Next up, we got Israel Draven with a 54% win record, and that's pretty relatively
That's
high.
pretty good.
Once again, I've tried to play this deck, but I am not smart enough to play it. I think this is one of those decks where it's not a true control deck, but to play this deck really well, you need to know like what your opponent's deck is trying to do, and you need to make sure that your quote unquote kill spell or quote unquote answer matches what they're trying to do. You know?
Yeah, I was just about to say you need to know exactly like what to use the get excited on, what to use
Right.
the mystic shot on.
Right.
And if you mess that up, you probably lose the game.
Correct. And I've lost the game for that exact reason many a time.
Like those cards, this deck is really good against like the Startling deck.
Oh.
I'm sure you know that.
It shreds me to pieces.
But this deck also kind of suffers from the mid-range problem. It's using these small bally answers to try to beat up on the aggro decks, but it's not quite there with the bigger mid-range deck.
Absolutely.
So we see it like kind of roll these like X2 creature decks, like the LeBlancs, the Spiderlings, but we see it lose pretty hard to things like the Shen Jarvan or excuse me, not the Shen Jarvan, the control decks like the Lysandra Trundle,
Right.
and the decks like the deep,
Right.
the bigger decks. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Medium-sized deck beats up on middle deck, loses to big deck. That's our rock paper scissors format.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
And this is the rock in the scissors paper. It is good. It is 54% win rate, pretty good against the meta. And this is like the Jund, I would say.
Yes.
Which is everything, but not quite good against everything.
Yes.
Great in any matchup.
Absolutely.
So, I think it appeals to a lot of people. I like this deck a lot personally. I like playing that style of Magic, or LOR, and so this is like a beat for me.
Yeah,
if we're giving upgrades.
It's as I said, if you know what you're doing and you like to feel smart, like this deck is for you.
I agree wholeheartedly. This is like do you know the meta check?
Yes. And then this last deck, well, there's two more decks, but this next deck on the list, it has 5% play rate, 54% win rate. It's Nightfall. And I've played with this deck, and this deck is for the person that likes to win the game in a different way. And what I mean by that is you have to play this deck differently than how you would normally play another deck. And I know that doesn't make sense, but if you play this deck, you'll know exactly what I mean. Just because Nightfall, it triggers off of everything being your second spell. So because of that, you have to think of the game differently. Whereas in Spiders or in Overwhelm, I don't have to think so much about that extra piece. I just play my things and go. Where in Nightfall, it's more okay, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to play anything on turn 1, hold that mana, so then I can play my Lunari Duskbringer so I can get the Petal, so then on my turn 2, I can go Petal into that weird looking owl thing for 1 mana, and then swing in for a 4/1 fearsome. Like
I
it's
like
just
the looking owl thing.
yeah. So it's just like it's a fun deck. Do not get me wrong. And if you like solving like different types of jigsaw puzzles, this is 100% the deck for you. Because if you can play this deck well, it's super gratifying because you figured everything out on a different type of lens. But man, like I need to
This
be
is
100% on it to play this deck, or else like I'm the idiot. I can't tell you how many times where like I'm like, oh, let me play this thing so I can get its effect. Oh wait, this was not the second spell. Like I can't tell you how many times I've done it where like, oh man, I win the game. Here we go. Oh crap, I was supposed to play this as my second spell, not my first one. I just lost the game right there and then.
yeah, a very sequencing dependent. Uh,
100%. Yes.
this is a very Cameron Galindo deck.
Kevin Lamb.
Yeah, he plays Infect for the Magic players out there, which is also heavy sequencing. So it's kind of like that, and Infect plays in that weird way. So just be careful if you're looking at this at like you saw a video and you're like, oh, this plays pretty cool. Be careful when you play this deck, because mistakes will cost you greatly, much more so than other decks.
Yes, this is one of those decks where like you need to think out your plays every turn. Like you just
Like,
need to. It isn't one
give
of those
yourself,
where you like just do the thing. No, like think about it.
yeah, give yourself 5 seconds. Like stop, think, say, talking out loud. Another free tip from your boy here. Say your plays out loud when you play.
Absolutely. Absolutely, sir.
Your brain will register what you're saying, and if it doesn't make sense, you will stop yourself, and it's very helpful.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times my wife will be like, everything okay over there? Yeah, everything's fine. Why do you keep saying Timo 10,000 times? I'm like, don't worry about it, babe.
Don't worry about
Everything's fine over here. And then the last one on the list, I don't know, Christos. This deck should be the deck I love.
it. It should.
This deck should be the deck that I learn and that I can master. And I'm talking about Ash Midrange, which is has a 53% win rate and a 4% play rate. And it should be all of these things, Christos, but I need more time with this. Because
Okay.
this deck is one of those decks in my eyes where you need to know when to turn the table on your opponent at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And I either don't turn it quick enough or I just never turn it at all. Because like
So, are you struggling with like casting Troll Chant, or like when to play like Sejuani or Ash?
right, the biggest thing is like when to play Ash correctly, when
Okay.
to play I forget the name, but the 5/1 that can't block but has challenger. When to play that card correctly, so then you can maximize your ability to play the Reckoning. The Reckoning being a 6 mana, kill all of the creatures that are 4 or less. Because
Okay.
I have a tendency to like, ooh, I think I got him, and then I use the Reckoning at the wrong time, and then like the next turn they just rebuild, and I'm like, oh man, like I should have maybe waited that turn, or like I'll play the Ash thinking she's safe, and then she's not safe, and then I'm in trouble.
So, a thing to think about when you cast Reckoning, and they rebuild like that, is are they playing around my Reckoning?
Sure.
And so you have to like mind game your opponent into thinking, hey, I have this card, you need to save your stuff, and then slowly pick off creatures. Like play your Ash into your own Reckoning. That's fine because she'll fight the biggest thing, and then they'll play their thing, and it's kind of like this back and forth. It's a very grindy
Yes.
match. Like all of its matchups are grindfest because of the way it plays. Like Ash
Absolutely.
wants to play like that. Trifarian Glory Seeker is that card you're thinking of, the 5/1.
Yes, yes, yes.
And so stuff like Harsh Wind, Three Sisters, these cards all want to play a longer game, and so you have to think about your stuff more. Ice Shard, cards like these, they all want to 3 for 1 your opponent, 4 for 1 your opponent,
Right.
like clear out boards, stuff like that. So you have to be ready to sit down and really think, like, what do I need to answer right this turn?
Yes.
And usually you can single out like 1 or 2 cards, deal damage to like a couple things. Can you double up on Ice Shard? Can you Ice Shard into Reckoning and then get something that way? It's stuff like that you really have to think of, and then it's another sequencing thing.
Yes.
Like, do you want to play your Ash, or do you want to like play a couple Omen Hawks and then have mana up for some answer of some kind? It's stuff like that you need to think about.
I think I just need more time with the deck. Because I've mentioned this before on the show, but like I'm one of those people, and I've had to change it because I last week I had extremely, I wouldn't say poor luck, but my win/loss record last week was pretty abysmal, and I think it's because like the matchmaking thing is coming after me. I don't know. I don't know if y'all have experienced this at home, but like I'll play 2 to 3 games with one deck, lose with it. I'll get mad, switch to another deck, and then as soon as I switch to the other deck, the next deck that I play is the counter to the deck I just switched from, and it would have been the deck that I would have easily smothered if I would have just kept with the deck that I was playing. So it happened to me so many times last week, so I made myself, I actually have a little notebook now where I write down the date and I write down the deck that I'm playing, and I make myself play at least 10 games with that deck before I decide to switch in or out of it. And as soon as I started doing that, I found that I'm one of the players that's like kind of like a car where like I need my engine to start going. I need
warmed up.
Exactly. I need to warm up. I need the car to turn on, but so that I can like get used to like, okay, that's the play pattern I gotta watch out for. I gotta do this in this matchup before I can successfully move to another deck and totally change the game like the way that I'm thinking. Because once I started doing that, according to my notes, I went on I went +5 with Spider Aggro, and then I went +7 with Timo Sejuani. And before, like, I went, like, there was one day, Christos, where I just wanted to cry. I went, like, 9 and, like, 17. And then if you look at all the stuff, I switched, like, to 4 or 5 different decks. So that's why I was like, you know what, Anthony? Get your head in the game. You need to at least play 10 times with this deck before you can say, like, hey, I need to switch to something else. And thankfully, I've been able to go back to where I was before I like went on that total spiral fall. So
you made it back to where you started.
Yes. So now I'm back to where I'm starting, and hopefully, if I keep on this pattern, I'll just keep on getting better and better with the decks and just get better against the meta. So just a overall question for you, Christos, that I was thinking about this the other day.
Okay.
So it seems that the community seems to be happier with this type of meta than with the meta it had to deal with before, correct?
Yes, I would say so.
So is my question, are players or communities happier, or are they more okay with metas that tend to favor aggro strategies more so than combo / control?
Yes.
I would lean to yes. I think players and player bases player bases tend to be a little more lenient, a little bit more forgiving in metas that have the top decks being more so of the aggro variant than anything else. Is
So
that I think that's a fair statement.
it is. I would, in my experience at least, when a combo deck becomes the top deck, it will get banned.
Yeah, I would. History says true. Yes.
Yes. So a very small percentage of the player base of card games actually likes to play combo decks. They are not fun for the people sitting across the table or on the other side of the screen.
You hear that, Bowman and Brofe? You hear that, Bowman
Yeah.
and Brofe? No to combo.
They're just miserable. You sit there, you want to play the game that you sit down for, and when your
Absolutely.
opponent combos off, you're not playing the game. You're sitting there watching another person play. And if I wanted to do that, I'd sit at home and watch a Twitch stream. So when you have these metas where people are playing Spider Aggro and J4 Shen, where you interact with the board state and you can block, that is the most balanced meta and the one most favorable for the player base, because blocking is the most important mechanic in any card game.
I'm I'm with you there. I'm with you there 100%. And I'm an at like I like to play aggro. I like to play aggro mid range. So these type of metas are the metas that I tend to enjoy more.
Like, you love to have a kill spell and like a pump spell for your creature, right?
Yes.
None of those cards matter against combo.
Ah, vale. Yeah.
Yeah. The three cards that are involved in that sequence don't matter at all in a combo matchup.
Right, because they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do regardless.
They don't care. And it's not.
Ah,
Yeah, that's why.
look at that. That's why we got Crystals, folks. That's why we have experts like Crystals on this show. Listen. So that was part of the meta that we want, like the meta snapshot that we wanted to talk about. Is there anything else you kind of wanted to talk about on this infographic, Christos?
Yeah, real quick. If we scroll down to the deck of the week, I think you'll like this a lot. We have an
Ooh.
MF Quinn deck here that I think you would like. It's pretty neat, pretty small sample size, but good win rate, and it rolls Lisa and Zoe.
Oh yeah, let's go. 79.7% win rate. Excuse
So-
me, I might need to take a picture of this and copy the code real quick.
We're looking at like 20, 25 games and winning like 18 to 22 of them.
Dang, I gotta try this deck out.
Yeah, and it's pretty neat. It's got some cards that I think you like. MF, I'm sure you like.
Yes.
Grizzled Ranger, you probably like, I can imagine. Cithria, also a cool card. Blinding Assault, pretty neat. I think you'd like this deck. It's pretty mid-rangey.
I'm gonna try this deck out. Maybe not tonight, but this is the deck is gonna be on my watch list.
Yeah. Would recommend you can go to our boys' Twitter here at Cosmic Plays with a K, and take a look at this infographic. And it's about halfway down, but it's pretty cool. I would give it a shot. It looks neat, and I would give it just play it. I see how it goes. I'm gonna play it because it looks really cool.
Yeah, 798 matches and a 56% win record. That's pretty good. It's a much smaller size compared to all the other decks that we have in the infographic, but that's pretty good to me.
Honestly, wouldn't be terribly surprised to see this at like 3% play rate in the next couple weeks, maybe 3 to 5.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty cool. And I think it has, so if it beats Lisa and Zoe, it also is probably pretty good against like control-y decks and maybe even like LeBlanc Ash.
Yes.
So,
I mean, I would looking at the cards, I would think so.
Yeah, and probably the deep too. So if like it's quick enough to be deep, so just keep that in mind. And that's a pretty good portion of the field. It's like 20%. So give it a shot.
You know what really surprises me too, off this meta game share and the win records?
TF.
No, I think I knew TF was gonna take a hit, but remember, we said that it's going to take a hit for now.
Yep.
Uh,
He'll,
but
he'll
the,
be
but
back.
but he'll be back. But the two decks that I have trouble playing against are not up here, and that's so interesting. I'm talking about the Lucian Azir combo aggro deck and the Thresh Nasus Kindred Nasus deck.
You know that deck, the Kindred Nasus deck, did just kind of get changed, and I think in this snapshot it included that time change.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so and then now I also see that like none of my none of my overwhelm decks made it. So maybe that's why I've been having some trouble uh, doing some climbing. I guess I gotta change my life, but it's fine. It's okay. It's fine. We'll be back. We'll
You
be
become
back,
one of the
folks.
players.
um, so now we kind of wanted to talk about something that I found interesting that happened. I'm not sure if it was last week or the week before, but usually in the LR community we don't get drama. Not saying that this is drama whatsoever, but it did cause some opposing views on this matter. And I don't want to mention any names or anything like that. We're not trying to fuel the pot or anything like that. We just want to have like a discussion about this. But last week or the week before, one of the more prominent content creators in the lore scene like made just like a nonchalant tweet, and basically it was along the lines of like, hey, using this website has helped me do great on laddering. They mentioned the website, and they basically said, knowing what kill spells your opponent is playing makes laddering much easier. That's me paraphrasing, but that was basically the gist of it. And he made that tweet nonchalantly. It caused a whole big uproar on Twitter, and then now that website and some parts of Mobilytics lost the ability to get into Runeterra's API. So, like getting into the what is it like the network or the mainframe of Runeterra.
Yeah, they can't access like the data that it puts out.
Right. So I found this very very interesting because I don't know about you viewers, but I use Mobilytics when I like to play Runeterra. So Christos, I bring this conversation to you. Is the ability for someone to have access to that information while laddering, is that cheating, or is that just taking advantage of the resources that you have?
It is cheating. So I will pose a question to you.
Yes, sir.
You have put together a brew that you have played for about 5 games and are working on, and you run across someone on ladder and they have every possible answer that you can think of to cards that only you think you would put in your deck at the time. And you get steamrolled by this person and move on with your time. You think it's unlucky, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a little sus.
A little sus.
Yeah, like
But
if it's a special
it's
brew that
okay.
I made and they knew, like they were able to play around some of my more
Obscure.
spicy cards. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's a little sus.
Yeah. Then later you see this thread. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it will tell me it's cheating.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
cheating.
I
Okay.
I, I know I know that's where I like. I also feel like it's cheating,
Mhm.
but I just
I
want to
wanted to
see the
pose this question to make our viewers think, like, because I would imagine a lot of them like put together a deck and they go play and then they see this happen, and if they were to see this thing like that, you'd probably be discouraged to keep playing the game. And so,
true.
in in other games with ladder, every deck list is closed. You can't know what your opponent's playing, and if you were to go see that person's streaming and go on their stream and see what they're doing, that's stream sniping and also highly frowned upon by the community at large. So when you have access to opponents' deck lists that they have not published willingly themselves, then that is highly immoral and not recommended to do in any community.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's where I lean towards the
Like, if your
conversation.
opponent has put out their deck list on Twitter or whatever website, by all means, it's out there. Like you, that is known information at that point. But when it's not known information, and you can't do that.
Yeah, especially like, you know, when you bring the spice for certain matchups, you know,
Mhm.
like you make these certain card choices because you want to make sure you have a more favorable matchup against some deck, and
And they
having
just
that,
know all your answers.
yeah,
So
having that information out there, yeah, that's not okay.
yeah, it's just it's when it comes down to it, is it's a morality thing for a lot of people, and I am one to uphold good standing in games. I do not like cheating, and I don't like cheaters. I think they should be banned like permanently.
Ooh.
Yeah. So when I see stuff like this, I am not okay with it.
And I will say that more so than not, the community seemed to definitely side with like that's kind of cheating, man.
Yeah.
And then so did Riot because Umbridge and Ruben were like on it. Like I want to say like 5 or 6 hours after that
That's really good
tweet
response
went
time
out,
by Riot.
and I feel kind of bad for like the website in the sense that like I don't think they really made it to kind of like really for like cheating purposes. I think it was really more for like getting to know the matchup and getting to know the decks that you play. But like just imagine you're working on something and then because of one random tweet, everything just goes
That just
downhill
falls
from
apart.
there. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely not good. Like I can even buy that they weren't inherently bad willed when they do that or when they made this tool. It's too powerful. It's too much information.
So my question to you is because as I said, I use Mobalytics, and Mobalytics allows me to see my graveyard and my opponent's graveyard, which is something that in card games like in Magic, like that's normal, and that's like given information. Is that also a problem in Runeterra, or is that fine?
I think that's fine. Just because by playing the game, you can know, like, you can see your opponent's graveyard. It is known information.
Right,
So I'm not too worried about stuff like that. And you look at it by the time you're in game. And so, like, by the time you see this information, you've probably already seen cards in their graveyard. So I don't worry about it too much.
right.
Uh, you're not looking at their entire deck list, is the main thing.
So yeah, like it makes a big difference when you're like, hey, I know they already played one vengeance,
Hmm.
and being like, okay, do I play around the second vengeance,
Yeah, you
or
don't know how many
knowing that
copies.
they only have one vengeance and being like, all right, I'm smashing, and that
Yeah,
makes
you're
a
free.
big
Yeah,
difference.
a huge, like impossibly big difference.
Yes, yes. So I think we're pretty on the same page when it comes to that position on the podcast where we believe that type of thing is just not acceptable in the community.
Yeah, just keep that in mind. Like, ask yourself, is this okay? I think it's a good rule of thumb. And if the answer is no, then probably don't do it.
Probably don't do that. Don't do that. Well, folks, ladies and gentlemen, I am pretty sure we're getting to that point where it's coming to the end of the episode. But before we say our goodbyes, we want to make sure you have the correct tools in which to interact with us. So if you want to interact with me, you can go ahead and tweet me at RicoPlay1723, or El Charua Rico. I'm usually posting about soccer, anime, or Legends of Runeterra. That's basically what I like to post a lot about. If you want to check out some of our YouTube stuff, go ahead and check us out at Casual Try Hard. Legends of Runeterra. You type that in the YouTube search bar, and then you'll find some of the videos that I've created. But for Christos, where can they find you, bud?
I am over on twitter.com at Christosi Vivo. KRISTOSII is also my Twitch stream. I'm on there every once in a while. I'm probably going to stream more here next week. There's a bunch of new leagues and stuff that are starting up, so I'll be on the ranked grind.
Let's go.
Yeah. And then our Twitter handle is at casual_pod. You can hit us up there in the DMs, or there's a link to our Discord channel in the kind of profile description there. Or you can hit us up in the DMs there as well, and we'll get to you anytime. We are looking for some audience members who would like to come on the show and give us a talk.
Yes, sir.
So if you're interested in doing that, slide into the DMs.
Yeah, come on down. We don't bite. We love to interact. We love to engage. If you speak Spanish, we can make it happen. I can speak Spanish. I got you covered. I know we got some listeners in the Philippines and in Poland. I can't really help you there, but we can maybe figure something out. We use like translator.com or something. We can figure something out, but any type of engagement, y'all, just to make sure that we aren't just talking to hot air out there. We love to listen to you. We love to start building a community. We want to be known as one of the nicer and stronger communities out there in the LOR world. So come on down. Don't be afraid to spend some time and talk with us.
Absolutely.
But as always, from me, Rico Plays 1723, it's sayonara.
And we'll see you next time, Summoners. As you know, I moved to New York and everything, and I've been setting my stuff up.
Yes, sir.
Get my life situated and everything. But, Rico, it is that time, every 3.5 months, when a new Path of Exile league comes out.
Oh, God.
And we are back at it again.
We're bringing this all the way back from episode 1 bloopers. Are you kidding me? You're back at it again?
It's that time again. They added a bunch of new skills. So me and Danny, I don't know if you remember him from the shop, but he kind of played Magic and is like a Smash player. Yeah, the very same.
Oaken, let's go!
Yeah, Danny and I have been hard, like nose to the grindstone, doing math for the past like 8 hours, trying to figure out the best build for this game.
Oh my gosh!
So when your math teacher says you're never using this in you're like gonna use this in life, and you're like, no, I'm not. This is useless. We out here doing math.
Well, what type of math are we doing out here?
Like exponential gains for damage.
Nope, I'm out.
Yep. It's like doing percentages and like figuring out what is the most optimal path. So, Path of Exile's like skill tree has thousands of options, and it's all presented as like a bunch of little circles. Here, I will share my screen and show you the tree. If you look at my stream right now, this is what we're doing.
Dear God, folks, if you saw this, I don't even know how to explain what I'm looking at right now.
It's a lot of circles that mean various bits of information.
Oh my goodness, Christos.
Yeah, so this is what we do, and then we throw it into the calculator here when we're done, and it gives us all DPS.
That is insane.
It's galaxy brain type stuff.
That's like level 10,000.
Mm-hmm. It's insane.
But I also heard they're doing Path of Exile 2.
They are doing Path of Exile 2. We saw a trailer for it here last week.
Were we about it? Did we like it?
Oh yeah. It was hot. It was hot. The game looks really good, and I can't wait for it to be as poorly optimized as Path of Exile is, so the computer can actually run it. Can't wait.
Oh my gosh! So you have it here, folks. In this podcast, we give you free advice. Peanut Butter Burgers,
Mhm.
Path of Exile.
Yeah, we'll get some Apex and Valorant, and don't you worry.
We give you everything in the show. We
Oh
give
yeah.
you
So
everything.
I will be staying awake for 2 days starting on Friday when the new league pops out.
Oh my god.
It's time.
It's time.
Mhm.
And